The bell above the door gave a soft, cheerful jingle as Dominic Russo stepped inside the little bakery on a quiet corner of Brooklyn. The warm smell of fresh vanilla and cinnamon wrapped around him like an old memory he couldn't quite place. He paused just inside the threshold, one hand still on the glass door, the other resting casually near the concealed holster under his tailored black coat. Outside, two of his men leaned against the black Escalade parked at the curb, watching the street with practiced boredom. In 15 years running the Russo crime family, one of the oldest and most feared syndicates in New York, Dominic had never once walked into a place like this to pick out a wedding cake. His consigliere usually handled those details, or his mother, or nobody at all, because weddings in his world were alliances, not celebrations. But today something had tugged at him, an instinct he couldn't name, and here he was. The bakery was small, cozy in a way that felt almost defiant against the grit of the neighborhood. Cream walls lined with framed photos of smiling customers, a chalkboard menu tilted slightly above the register, jazz drifting softly from a speaker near the back. Dominic's eyes scanned the room out of habit, exits, corners, potential threats, then landed on her. She stood behind the counter with her back to him, tying a flour-dusted apron around her waist. Chestnut hair pulled into a loose knot, strands escaping like they always used to. She looked thinner now, her shoulders carrying the weight of too many long days. Faint shadows marked her wrists, old scars from years of hard work, not violence. She turned to reach for a tray on the high shelf, humming under her breath, and Dominic felt the air leave his lungs. Elena. The name hit him like a slug to the chest. 5 years. 5 years since she'd vanished from the apartment they'd shared in secret, leaving only the emerald engagement ring on his pillow and a silence that had nearly broken him. He should have walked out right then. Should have told Luca to order the cake online like any sane Don would, but his feet wouldn't move. Elena turned fully, wiping her hands on a towel, and their eyes locked across the narrow space between them. The color drained from her face in an instant. The small order pad slipped from her fingers and landed on the counter with a muted thud. For 3 long seconds, neither of them breathed. Before Dominic could force a word past the knot in his throat, a child's voice cut through the quiet. Mommy, look, I finished the drawing." Small sneakers pounded across the worn floorboards. A little boy, no more than 4, burst through the doorway behind the counter, clutching a crayon masterpiece in both hands. He wore a faded green t-shirt with a rocket ship on it, his dark hair wild and tousled. He pressed close to Elena's leg when he noticed the tall stranger in the doorway, suddenly shy, peeking up with wide gray eyes. Eyes the exact shade of Dominic's own, storm cloud gray, sharp and unyielding. The boy tilted his head, studying Dominic the way children do when they sense something important but don't understand it yet. Dominic stared back, the world tilting violently beneath him. The jawline, the shape of the brow, the way the boy's mouth quirked when he was curious. It was like looking into a mirror from 25 years ago. The ruthless Mafia Don stood frozen in the middle of a tiny Brooklyn bakery, staring at a child who carried his blood, his features, his legacy, and every certainty he'd built over the last 5 years cracked open like cheap glass. Elena recovered first. She scooped the boy, Noah, Dominic would learn later, into her arms and held him against her chest like a shield. "Sweetheart, go finish coloring in the back for a minute, okay? Mommy needs to talk to this customer." Noah nodded solemnly, glancing once more at Dominic before disappearing through the doorway. Elena set him down gently, then turned back to face the man she'd once loved more than life itself. "Dominic," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter. "What are you doing here?" The ruthless Mafia Don took one careful step forward, then another, until only the display case separated them. "I came for a cake," he said, the words sounding absurd even to him. "But I think we both know that's not why I'm really standing here." Alina's gaze flicked to the door, then back to him. You need to leave. Not until you explain why my son just called you mommy. Her breath caught. She didn't deny it. Couldn't. The truth sat between them, heavy and undeniable. 5 years, Alina, Dominic said, voice low and rough. 5 years I tore this city apart looking for you. Private investigators, favors from every family in the tri-state area, rewards big enough to make men disappear if they didn't deliver. And you were here, right here in Brooklyn. She laughed once, a small, bitter sound. You looked for me. Every damn day for the first 2 years. And then my mother told me you, taken money and run, said you, played me from the start. I believed her because the alternative hurt too much. Alina's eyes flashed. Your mother. The way she said it, like a curse, made the hair on the back of Dominic's neck stand up. Before he could press, Noah's voice floated from the back room again, small and curious. Mommy, is the tall man staying for cookies? Alina closed her eyes for a second, then opened them and met Dominic's stare head-on. Come back tonight, after closing, back door. Alone, no men, no guns. If you want answers, that's the only way you get them. Dominic studied her, the exhaustion in her posture, the fierce protectiveness in her eyes, the way she stood between him and the doorway to their son. The ruthless Mafia Don, a man who'd ordered deaths without blinking, felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. Tonight, he agreed. He turned and walked out without another word. The bell jingled behind him like a warning. Back in the Escalade, Luca glanced over from the driver's seat. Boss, you good? Dominic stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Drive. He didn't speak again until they were halfway across the bridge into Manhattan. Luca, I need you to pull every record we have on Alina Harper, last 5 years. Every address, every job, every hospital visit. Quietly. And get me everything on my mother's movements the night Alina disappeared. Security footage, phone logs, anything. Luca didn't ask questions. He just nodded. On it. That night, Dominic stood alone at the back door of the bakery exactly at 10. No coat, no tie, no visible weapon, just a black sweater and jeans that made him look almost ordinary. Almost. Alina opened the door slowly. She changed into a simple gray hoodie and leggings, hair down now, framing a face that looked both older and exactly the same. She stepped aside without a word, letting him into the small living space behind the shop. It was tiny. A narrow bed against one wall, a child-sized table covered in crayons, a single lamp casting soft light over everything. Crayon drawings taped to the wall, rockets, dinosaurs, a family of 3 stick figures holding hands. No father in any of them. Noah was already asleep in the next room, small snores drifting through the cracked door. Alina folded her arms across her chest, standing as far from Dominic as the cramped space allowed. Ask. The ruthless Mafia Don looked around the room that housed his son, then back at the woman who'd raised him alone. Why did you leave? She laughed again, sharper this time. You really don't know. Enlighten me. Your mother came to our apartment that night. 4 men in black, guns. She walked in like she owned the place, looked at me like I was dirt, and told me I wasn't good enough for her son. Said the Russo name would never carry an orphan's blood. Then she pressed a pistol to my head and gave me a choice, disappear or die. She knew I was pregnant. She knew Dominic, and she made sure I'd never come back. Dominic felt the words land like punches. That's not possible. Alina reached into a drawer and pulled out a small envelope, creased, faded. She tossed it onto the table between them. Inside, a one-way bus ticket stub from 5 years ago and $5,000 in old hundreds. The same money Isabella Russo had thrown at her like trash. I left the ring on the pillow so you'd know I didn't want to go, Alina said quietly. That was the only thing I could leave behind. Dominic stared at the ticket stub until the edges blurred. Memories crashed over him, his mother's comfort after Alina vanished, her assurances that Alina had only wanted his money, her insistence that he move on, marry for the family. He'd believed every lie because the truth would have destroyed him. He looked up. Noah, he's sick. Alina's face crumpled for the first time. Congenital heart defect, diagnosed when he was 3. The surgery costs $150,000. I've been working 3 jobs, borrowing from people I shouldn't, just to keep the medicine in him. Every night I pray he wakes up breathing. The ruthless Mafia Don felt something inside him crack wide open. His son, his blood, was fighting for his life in a back room behind a bakery, while Dominic sat in a penthouse worth millions. I'm paying for the surgery, he said. Tomorrow, best doctors in the city, whatever it takes. Alina shook her head. I don't want your money. You don't have a choice, not when it's his life. She stared at him for a long moment, then looked away. He asks about his dad every day. I tell him his dad is far away. He draws pictures with an empty space next to us, waiting. Dominic's throat closed. Does he know who I am? Not yet. She met his eyes again. But if you're staying, you don't get to dip in and out. He's already lost enough. The ruthless Mafia Don nodded once. I'm not going anywhere. He left close to midnight, promising to return the next day. On the drive back to Manhattan, he called Luca. Change of plans. Bring the best pediatric cardiologist you can find, and start digging deeper. I want proof. Every call, every payment, every meeting my mother had 5 years ago. 24 hours later, Luca laid a file on Dominic's desk in the penthouse overlooking Central Park. Security stills from the old apartment building. Isabella's black Mercedes idling outside the night Alina vanished. Bank records. A transfer to the investigators Dominic had hired, signed by his mother. Phone logs. Calls to known associates of Victor Kane, the head of a rival syndicate Dominic had crushed years earlier. Everything Alina said was true. The ruthless Mafia Don sat alone in the dark, staring at the evidence of the greatest betrayal of his life. The next morning, he drove to his mother's estate in the Hamptons. No warning, no entourage, just him, the file, and a cold fury that burned cleaner than any rage he'd ever felt. Isabella Russo sat at her breakfast table in a silk robe, sipping espresso like any other morning. When she saw her son, she smiled. Dominic, what a surprise. He dropped the file in front of her. Photos, transcripts, bank statements scattered across the marble. No more games, Mother. She glanced at the papers, then back at him. Calm, too calm. So you found the girl. Her name is Alina, and my son's name is Noah, your grandson. Isabella set her cup down carefully. I did what was necessary to protect this family. That woman was nothing. An orphan with no name, no future. She would have ruined you, ruined us. You put a gun to her head while she was carrying my child. I gave her a chance to walk away. She chose poorly. Dominic leaned forward. You lied to me for 5 years, watched me grieve, comforted me, and all the time you knew where she was, where he was. I protected the Russo name. You protected your control. His voice dropped. You won't have it anymore. She stood, chin high. If you choose her over this family, you'll lose everything. The other families won't stand for it. Victor Kane is already sniffing around. One word from me. Dominic turned and walked out without another word. Behind him, Isabella picked up her phone. That afternoon, Dominic returned to the bakery. He came alone again, carrying a small stuffed wolf, something soft, something a boy could hold at night. Noah ran to the door when he heard the knock, eyes lighting up. You came back. The ruthless Mafia Don knelt to his son's level. I told you I would. Elena watched from the doorway, arms crossed, heart warring between hope and fear. Over the next week, Dominic visited every day. No bodyguards, No flash, just a man learning how to be a father. He sat on the floor building towers out of blocks. He read picture books in a low voice that made Noah giggle. He brought new crayons, puzzles, a toy car that lit up when you pushed it. Noah stopped calling him the tall man. He started calling him Dom. Then, one evening after Alina tucked him in, the boy whispered, "Mommy says you're my daddy." Alina froze in the doorway. Dominic looked up at her, eyes raw. She nodded slowly. "I told him when they took us. I thought we were going to die. I wanted him to know he had a dad who would come if he could." Dominic's breath caught. "They took you." Alina looked away. "Not yet, but I'm scared, Dominic. Your world, it's dangerous." The ruthless Mafia Don stood. "Not anymore. Not for you, not for him." But the danger was already moving. Alina watched Dominic leave that night with a tightness in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Hope and fear twisted together like barbed wire. She spent 5 years building walls around her heart and her son, brick by careful brick. Now the man who could tear them down with a single word had walked back in, promising to stay. The next few days passed in a fragile rhythm. Dominic arrived every afternoon, always alone, always careful. He brought small things, Noah's favorite chocolate milk, a puzzle of the Brooklyn Bridge, a soft blanket for the cold nights. The ruthless Mafia Don sat cross-legged on the worn rug, letting a 4-year-old boss him around with toy cars and demands for one more story. Noah's laughter filled the tiny apartment like sunlight breaking through clouds. Alina kept her distance at first. She watched from the kitchen doorway while she kneaded dough or washed dishes, searching for cracks in Dominic's resolve. But every time Noah climbed onto Dominic's lap or tugged at his sleeve saying, "Daddy, look," something inside her softened against her will. One evening, after Noah had fallen asleep clutching the stuffed wolf Dominic had given him, the two adults sat at the small table. The lamp cast long shadows across the crayon drawings on the wall. "He's getting stronger already," Dominic said quietly. "The cardiologist says the surgery next week has an excellent chance, 95%. Alina traced the rim of her coffee mug. "I still can't believe you got the best surgeon in the city to clear his schedule for us." "I'd clear the whole hospital if I had to." The ruthless Mafia Don leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Alina, I want you both to move into the penthouse. Security's airtight, doctors on call. No more worrying about rent or medicine or—" "No," her voice was firm. "Not yet. Noah's world is small and safe right here. Pulling him into yours too fast, it could scare him, and I'm not ready to step back into that life either." Dominic studied her face, the stubborn set of her jaw, the shadows under her eyes that hadn't faded in 5 years. "I understand, but I'm not losing you again, either of you." She met his gaze. "Then prove it every day, not with money, with time." He nodded once. "Done." But time was something they didn't have as much of as they thought. Isabella Russo sat in her Hampton study, staring at the phone in her hand. Her son had walked out on her, publicly challenged her authority, chosen an orphan waitress and a bastard child over blood, over legacy, over the empire she'd bled to build. The insult burned deeper than any wound. She dialed a number she hadn't used in years. Victor Kane answered on the second ring. His voice was gravel and venom. "Isabella, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "I have information you'll want," she said coolly. "My son has a weakness now, a woman and a boy. They're in Brooklyn, small bakery on Flatbush. He's there every day, alone." A long pause, then Kane's low chuckle. "You're handing me the head of the Russo family on a platter. Why?" "Because he's no longer fit to lead, and because I want the girl gone. The boy, you can keep him alive. He carries Russo blood, but her, make her disappear, permanently." "Consider it done." Kane's tone turned hungry. "And when I have them, Dominic will hand over everything to get them back. The eastern docks, the warehouses, the routes, all of it." Isabella ended the call without another word. She told herself this was for the family, for honor. But deep down, the truth was colder. She would rather see her son broken than watch him choose love over power. 3 days later, Noah's surgery went perfectly. The boy woke up groggy but smiling, clutching Dominic's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Daddy stayed," he whispered. The ruthless Mafia Don hadn't left the hospital room once. "Always will, kid." Elena cried quietly in the hallway, relief crashing over her in waves. For the first time in years, she let herself believe things might actually be okay. They returned to the bakery that weekend. Noah was still weak, but the color was coming back to his cheeks. Dominic insisted on extra security, 2 discreet men across the street, but he kept his promise. No overwhelming presence. No armored cars. Just him helping Elena close up, carrying trays, wiping counters like any other man. That night he had to leave for a meeting. A shipment at the docks had been flagged by the feds, nothing major, but it required the Don's personal attention. He kissed Noah's forehead, then turned to Elena at the door. "I'll be back before midnight," he promised. She nodded, but unease flickered in her eyes. "Be careful." He cupped her face gently. "I always am." He didn't know the emergency at the docks was a diversion. Victor Kane's men had been watching for days. 2 hours after Dominic left, the street outside the bakery went unnaturally quiet. The 2 Russo guards never saw the silenced shots coming. They dropped without a sound, blood pooling on the sidewalk. Inside, Elena was reading Noah a bedtime story when the front door crashed open. 4 men in black masks stormed through, guns raised. She shoved Noah behind her, heart slamming against her ribs. "Stay back," she shouted, grabbing the heavy rolling pin from the counter. One of the men laughed. "Feisty, Kane said you might be." Elena swung hard. The pin connected with the first man's wrist, bone cracked, gun clattered to the floor. She fought like a cornered animal, kicking, clawing, screaming for Noah to run to the back exit. But they were too many. A fist slammed into her temple. Stars exploded behind her eyes. She went down hard, tasting blood. Noah's terrified cry echoed from the hallway. "Mommy." They dragged her across the floor. She kicked, twisted, bit the hand that clamped over her mouth. Another blow to her ribs stole her breath. Darkness edged in. She saw them grab Noah, small arms flailing, tears streaming as they hauled him toward the door. "Mommy, mommy, help." Then nothing. Dominic felt the dread hit him halfway back from the docks. The shipment issue had been nothing, a paperwork mix-up, easily fixed, but his phone stayed silent. No text from Elena saying goodnight, no check-in from the guards. He floored the accelerator, weaving through late-night traffic. When he reached the bakery, the front door hung open like a broken jaw. 2 bodies lay on the sidewalk, his men, throats slit, eyes staring blankly at the sky. Inside, overturned chairs, blood smeared across the tiles, Noah's stuffed wolf lying abandoned on the floor. Dominic dropped to his knees in the wreckage. A roar built in his chest and tore free, raw animal, shattering the quiet street. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, a video. He opened it with shaking hands. Elena sat on cold concrete, wrists zip-tied behind her, face bruised and swollen, one eye nearly closed. Blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. Behind her in the shadows, Noah curled into a ball, sobbing quietly. Victor Kane stepped into frame, smiling like he'd won the lottery. "Evening, Don Russo. Nice family you got here. Shame if something happened to them. You want them breathing? Hand over the Eastern Territory. All routes, all contacts, all ledgers. 48 hours. Try anything cute and I start with the boy's fingers. Pinky first." The screen went black. The ruthless Mafia Don stared at the frozen image until his vision blurred with rage. 48 hours. 48 hours to trade his empire for the lives of the only two people who mattered. He stood slowly, blood dripping from his clenched fists, where his nails had cut into his palms. "Luca," he said into the phone, voice deadly calm. "Get everyone, every man loyal to me, we're finding them. And when we do, no one walks away." 20 hours later, they had a location, an abandoned warehouse in Jersey City just across the river. Kane's crew, 15 armed men, heavy security. Dominic didn't hesitate. Midnight, a convoy rolled silent through the industrial backroads. 20 of his best, blacked-out SUVs, heavy weapons. The ruthless Mafia Don led from the front, moving like a shadow with a death wish. They hit the perimeter hard and fast. Suppressed gunfire cracked through the night. Bodies dropped before they could raise alarms. Dominic kicked in a side door, gun raised, sweeping corners. Inside, the air stank of oil and fear. He followed Noah's feint, crying down a corridor, taking down 2 guards with precise shots. Then he saw them. Elena on the floor, bound, battered, but alive, eyes locking onto his with desperate relief. Noah in the corner, small and shaking. Dominic took 1 step toward them. A laugh echoed from the shadows. Victor Kane stepped out, pistol trained on Dominic's head. Always the hero, huh? Drop it, or she dies first. The ruthless Mafia Don looked at Elena, at Noah, then back at Kane. He let his gun fall. Kane grinned wider. Smart man. He didn't see the blade Dominic had taped inside his sleeve. When Kane came close enough to gloat, Dominic moved, fast, lethal. He knocked the gun aside, drove the knife into Kane's side. Kane screamed. Dominic tackled him, fists raining down until the rival's face was pulp. "Touch my family," Dominic snarled, "and death is mercy." He signaled Luca, who'd breached from the other side. "Take him. Alive. We'll have a long talk later." Then he was at Elena's side, cutting her bonds with careful hands. She collapsed against him, trembling. Noah crawled over, throwing himself into both their arms. "Daddy came," the boy sobbed. "Daddy saved us." The ruthless Mafia Don held them both, blood on his hands, tears on his face for the second time in his life. "Always," he whispered. "Always." 3 days later, the heads of the major New York families gathered in a private room at an old Italian restaurant in Little Italy. Dominic stood at the head of the long table, file in hand. "I called this meeting to set the record straight," he said. 5 years ago, my mother forced the woman I loved to disappear, threatened her life, hid my son from me, and 3 days ago she sold their location to Victor Kane to punish me for choosing them over the old ways. He distributed the evidence, recordings, photos, financial trails. Isabella's voice filled the room on the final clip. "The girl disappears, the boy lives, he has Russo blood." The room went deathly quiet. Don Morty, oldest of the families, spoke first. "Betraying blood to an enemy, that's a line you don't cross." Others nodded. No one spoke for Isabella. She was brought in last, dressed plainly, stripped of her usual elegance. She stood defiant until the verdict came. Exile, permanent, no contact, no return to the city. Violation meant death. She looked at Dominic one final time. "You'll destroy everything I built." The ruthless Mafia Don met her eyes without emotion. "You destroyed yourself." She was escorted out. The families left one by one, some with new respect for the man who'd chosen love over power. Months later, the penthouse overlooking the city felt different, warmer. Dominic still ran the family, but the late nights were fewer. He came home for dinner, read to Noah, held Elena when nightmares came. One crisp fall evening, with Noah asleep and the city lights glittering below, Dominic led Elena to the terrace. He knelt, a simple platinum band in his hand. 6 years ago I asked you to marry me," he said. "I couldn't keep that promise then, but I can now. Elena Harper, will you be my wife? Not for alliances. Not for the name, just because I love you, always have, always will. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She nodded. Yes. The wedding was small. Father Michael's old church in Brooklyn, the same one that had sheltered her during the worst years. No press. No spectacle. Just close friends, Lucas standing as best man, Noah carrying the rings with proud concentration. When the vows were spoken, Noah shouted, "I do," for the family part, making everyone laugh through happy tears. A year later, the bakery had moved to a better spot in Park Slope. Elena ran it with pride. No handouts, just hard work and love. Dominic had shifted more toward legitimate businesses, building something clean for Noah to inherit one day. Noah was 6 now, healthy, happy, drawing pictures of the 3 of them under a big sun. No empty spaces anymore. One night, as the family sat together reading, Noah looked up at his parents. "This is the best story ever, because it's ours." Dominic pulled them both close. The ruthless Mafia Don was gone in that moment. Only a husband, a father, a man who'd finally found his way home.